The sky looked completely normal until the aircraft suddenly dropped out of the clouds. Passengers screamed as oxygen masks fell from the ceiling. Within seconds, disaster became unavoidable. One of the deadliest plane crashes in history happened on March 27, 1977, at a small airport in Tenerife. Two massive Boeing 747 airplanes sat on the runway, surrounded by heavy fog. Visibility was terrible. Pilots could barely see ahead.
Then confusion inside the cockpit changed everything. One aircraft mistakenly accelerated for takeoff, while another plane was still directly on the runway. Air traffic controllers tried warning them, but it was already too late. The giant aircraft slammed into each other in a massive fireball. Explosions ripped across the airport, while black smoke filled the sky. Passengers trapped inside the planes tried escaping through burning wreckage as emergency crews rushed toward the inferno. More than 580 people lost their lives that day, making it the deadliest aviation disaster in history. And yet, even more terrifying crashes would follow. In 1996, Saudi Arabian Airlines Flight 763 climbed into the skies above India during a routine flight. At the same moment, another aircraft approached from the opposite direction. Inside the clouds, both planes moved toward each other at terrifying speed. Air traffic control warnings came only seconds before impact. Pilots desperately tried changing altitude, but there was no time left. The two airplanes collided in midair. Thousands of pieces of burning metal exploded across the sky before crashing into the ground below. Witnesses described seeing fire raining from the clouds as debris scattered across miles of land. Nearly 350 people died in the disaster. And for many aviation experts, it became one of the most horrifying mid-air collisions ever recorded. But some crashes became terrifying because passengers knew exactly what was happening before the end. In 2009, Air France Flight 447 disappeared over the Atlantic Ocean during a nighttime storm. The aircraft flew directly into severe turbulence while ice began forming on critical sensors outside the plane. Suddenly, pilots received conflicting speed readings inside the cockpit. Then, chaos began. Warning alarms filled the cockpit as the aircraft started losing altitude high above the dark Atlantic Ocean. Confused pilots struggled to understand what was happening while the plane drifted farther and farther out of control. Passengers sitting inside the dark cabin likely felt every violent movement as the aircraft dropped through storm clouds over the ocean. Minutes later, the plane vanished from radar forever. For years, the wreckage remained hidden deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean floor, and investigators later discovered the aircraft had stalled high above the ocean before falling into the sea. But perhaps one of the most emotional plane disasters in history happened in 1985. Japan Airlines Flight 123 took off from Tokyo, carrying hundreds of passengers during a busy summer evening. Shortly after takeoff, passengers heard a massive explosion from the rear of the aircraft. The plane suddenly became almost impossible to control. Pilots fought desperately to keep the aircraft in the air, while terrified passengers wrote final goodbye messages to their families. For over 30 terrifying minutes, the damaged aircraft flew through the mountains of Japan as pilots struggled to save everyone on board. Then came the crash. The plane slammed into a mountainside at high speed, destroying the aircraft instantly. More than 500 people lost their lives, making it the deadliest single aircraft crash ever recorded. And even today, recovered passenger letters from that flight continue to haunt investigators around the world. But modern aviation disasters can still happen. In 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 took off from Indonesia before pilots noticed serious problems almost immediately. The nose of the aircraft repeatedly pushed downward automatically, while pilots desperately tried regaining control. Warning alarms echoed through the cockpit as the plane continued losing altitude over the ocean. Passengers likely had no idea the aircraft was fighting against its own system. Then, suddenly, the plane entered a rapid dive and slammed into the sea at devastating speed. Investigators later discovered critical problems connected to the aircraft's automated flight system. The crash shocked the aviation world and raised serious questions about modern airplane technology. And maybe that's what makes plane disasters so terrifying. Thousands of people trust aircraft every single day. They sit beside windows, listen to engine noise, and believe they'll safely reach their destination within hours. But high above the clouds, one small mistake, one system failure, or one moment of confusion can turn an ordinary flight into a catastrophe remembered forever.